with the muddy pond. Okay, that's okay. So I've been a 3D potter artist for probably 30-something years. And although I've had different breaks through the years, it's always drawn me back to it. So I went to school, did ceramics, had a little studio in my backyard, which I loved, pottery wheel, kiln, all that kind of thing. And then I moved over here, had my children, and I was approached by a lady to start doing pottery over here, and that was 1.5 years ago. And since then, which I loved, I've just loved having my own pottery studio. Since then, I've parted ways with her, and I'm solo. So winging a prayer, flying as high as I can, and I'm just loving every minute and going for it. So in my studio, as was explained, I have a lot of different areas of pottery that I do work with. So I'm going to do a wheel demonstration, and then I'm going to show you the bisque square, which is this. And then I'm going to show you just some clay work, hand building. So out of everything, I trained as an industrial potter, which is this part of it. And I love that. But hand building, oh, it does have my heart, I can't lie. It is just such a wonderful, flexible medium that you can do almost anything with. It's kind of an exciting way to express. It's exciting the way you can just create. And a lot of people tell me that it is extremely intimidating. They think that, with the clay, oh, it looks so hard, it looks so difficult to do. And what I tell them is this: you can roll a slab of clay out, texture it, and you have art. I mean, it can be the simplest form, but when you put glaze on it, that's when you become extremely creative. And it's all about, most of my students that come in have never touched clay before. They're like, we have no idea. But they come out with masterpieces. And it's just a case of them slowing their mind, breathing, and then letting that creativeness happen. And clay is a mind of its own. So even though you can't get any more simple than this, can you? It's 100% natural, it's straight out of the earth, but it's like it has a mind of its own. So as you're starting to form, whether it's a coil pot, whether it's a slab you're rolling out, all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I know what this needs to be. And then all of a sudden you can start creating in that direction. And then there's all sorts of things like cookie cutters. These are great. You can texture the clay and then cut it out for simple things. And then there's also these fondant cookie cutters. So before you know it, with a few techniques that I teach you, you have a creation that you can be proud of and just enjoy. Because once it's fired, it'll last as long as you look after it, which is awesome. So I think I'm going to start with a pottery wheel demonstration first. So I've prepared the clay. You all able to see there? You okay?
Are we having your splatters on?
You definitely are, yes. You're quite safe over there. So, first thing I'm going to do, I've prepared the clay ready, is to just give it a little point on the end. I hope everyone can see okay. Let me move this down here. Is that better? Everybody see that? Okay, so we have to attach this to this, and depending on what bat you've got, sometimes it will stick, sometimes it won't. Now mine needs to be really dry for it to stick. Some people have bats that they put on that they need it slightly wet for the clay to stick. So I roll the clay first of all like this to make it almost like a little ice cream cone shape, and then on it goes. And then I start my wheel. Oh, there it goes. Let me check that's on actually. Yes, that's good. you always need plenty of water when you're doing your pottery, because if you don't, what happens is it will actually pull off the wheel. So I'm shaping it now. As you can see, I've made like a little cone, okay? So you don't want to go too fast. There are times when you need the clay fast, but there's times then you just need it nice and slow. So this is a medium slow. I'm going to make sure my hands are wet. My clay is wet.
What is the approximate cost of a machine with a wheel like that?
Okay, so when I started off with my pottery, I thought, gosh, I need to get some wheels, and these things are $1,000 a pop. What am I going to do? So what I did was I went on Amazon and eBay and looked at the cheapest wheels I could find. And I bought $100 wheels because I realized beginners, they don't need a fancy pottery wheel. They just need a wheel. And as it happened, when I got these wheels back, I realized they were light enough to be able to lift. So I now had 4 pottery wheels and this one, and they all fitted in my car. So I started doing pop-up pottery. So I go to restaurants with my 5 pottery wheels, and I only have a little car. My husband's like, how on earth would you do that? Well, let me tell you. The first time I did it, I got everything in, but I didn't account for the pottery that being made. So that was perched very gently on the passenger side on top of other things, but I got it home in one piece. But so to answer your question, if you are starting out, I would definitely consider doing the $100, $150 pottery wheels you find on Amazon and eBay. You need to keep it under 2 pounds in clay though. So you can make mugs, bowls, plates, all if they're under 2 pounds. As soon as you go over that, it kind of messes the pottery wheel up. But for beginners, to find out if it's definitely something you want, that's definitely worth doing.
And the bricks of clay come in what weight?
So it's £25 for a block of clay, and I do sell that.
So 2 pounds is still a good chunk.
Well, yeah, it's probably a little bit more than this. So this is probably about £1.25 pound, £1.50. So, but yes, you could make all sorts of things with that. And then if you decided, yes, this is something for me, then yeah, you get the beasts. And they go anywhere from, this was about $600-700, and then they go all the way up to, you name it. $1,000 will get you a decent one. 1,500. It's probably got some gold in there somewhere, I'm thinking. But definitely is a lot of fun, and it definitely is good for your soul. So I do recommend it. Okay. Anyone got any more questions? Yeah? I don't mind. I'm happy to answer any questions as I go. Okay, so wet my hands. So the first thing I'm going to do is center the clay. Now, a lot of people get to this point and they're like, I just can't do that. I can't. But there are techniques, there are ways that I can show you that it's very easy. It makes it possible. And also I've had people come to me that have wanted me to help them see where they've gone wrong. Like, what am I doing wrong? So I will help them work out what, position of hands better, or, what they're doing is not quite flowing so that it's not working. So, but anyway, let's get going. So the hand positions I'm going to use, this hand here, I always use my palms on my hands. So this hand here is going to support the side, and as you can see, it's a bit of a rough ride right now. This hand here comes in against the clay, so I'm doing this position with my hands, okay? So I've got my elbows on my knees, and then I start squeezing very gently. I make sure I've got lots of water flowing, and this is called coning. So this is the first position, and then I'm going to push down and make it into more of a dome. And then you can see that's the second position. Now, if you can imagine a bowl full of jelly beans, what you want is all those jelly beans go in the same direction, and that's what centering pretty much does. So by coning and doming, maybe 3-4 times, and then testing it, you will know whether or not your clay is centered. So I go from this position, which is a dome, back into a cone. And then I go back to a dome. And sometimes when I've done this 100 times, I'm starting to cone and dome confused. I recently went to Lone Star Lights, and I was there 11 days, and I flew average with people between 30 and 40 bowls an evening. And I had a lot of cheats in place. They had a blast, and I loved what they made. So it worked for both of us then. Okay. So how I test if this is ready is I put my hand on top. Now I can still feel a little bit of a wobble. Can you see my hand shaking a little bit? And that tells me that it's almost there but not quite. So I go back in, I dome it, and then I cone it again. Now a lot of people ask me at this point with this small amount of clay, do I really need to cone it all the way up? Because you see a lot of that on videos you watch. The cones are up and then they come in all the way down with the domes. Honestly, what I found is if it's a small little piece like this, you just need a small movement. You don't need to be coning where you've got a big cone up here and then it's very flat. If you are throwing 5 pounds of clay, then you cone and dome the top, and that's where you get the big shapes that come in there. Otherwise, it's just a gentle movement. And if you squeeze too hard, then it throws it off center. And that can be an issue too, because then you get your wobble back. So what I just did then was lined this part of my hand up to the center of the clay, and then I just brought it across and down to make this shape here that I've got. And I'm believing this is centered. That feels pretty good. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cup the clay like this, put one thumb on top of the other thumb, and then lower that into the center of the clay. This is the first part of making the pot. And then once I've done that, I will widen my thumbs out, push in the walls of the pot outwards, and this will make my base. So here I go. I'm going to cut one thumb on top of the other and press down. Now, when we get to this point, people are very surprised how hard it is to press down on the clay. It's because it's been, every time I've coned and domed, it compresses the clay, makes it more compact each time. So right now I've got an area where I've got the base starting to form, but am I deep enough? How do I know if this is where I need to be with that base? So what I do is, I've seen a couple of ways to do this, but the way I do it is, this is called a needle tool. I just put it in the center, slide my fingers down, and then I know I have that much on my base. Now, typically you want it probably ½ an inch thick, and that will give me room then to actually put a foot on there, trim it later. Okay. So I'm going to lower that a little bit more, just by pressing my thumbs one on top of the other. Now I'm going to widen my thumbs out. This is kind of a satisfying feeling because the clay just goes.
of pressure on it. You use a lot of pressure.
No, not really. It's clay automatically wants to go outwards because of the G-force of the wheel traveling. So it didn't last long, did it? So when you actually nudge it in that way, it tends to flow that way pretty quick. The hardest part I think that people find is to center because you're gently squeezing, but after that bit, as you can see, I've got the base widened and then I'm ready now to start pulling those walls up. So the first thing I'm going to do is just trim under here with my thumbnail. That will give me like a groove that I can actually put my finger in. So some people like to throw with a sponge. I like to use my knuckle. And I get my knuckle into that groove there and I pull up and then I twist it as I get to the top. So this hand has got fingers inside the bowl here and my thumb is outside. So this is what my hand is going to look like on top of this pottery plate here. Get some water flowing. Then with my hand, which you can keep your sponge in to keep the liquid, the water going if you want, I'm going to butt it up to my thumb. And then I'm just going to slowly pull up that wall. Can you see it moving? So once I've done that once, I need to compress the rim. So how you compress the rim is you just take your fingers each side of the clay, and then with this finger, you just smooth that rim out. And depending on what you're making, sometimes I like to just cup it back in, like so. And I start again. So this is the threefold system that I'm going to use continually until I get that pot where I want it high enough, and then I can start shaping the clay. So here I go again, I'm going in, and I'm pulling up. I like to clean out the clay from inside it too, if I'm not doing anything with the clay. If you leave water inside there sitting, it can cause cracking later on. So it's good to just keep on top of that. And bring it back in. Tidy this up a bit. People tell me it's very